So, the channel hit 200 subscribers.
Yeah, woohoo! Get in there!
But in all honesty, thanks so much for the support, as my past few videos have done really well, and here's to another 200 in the future. Anyways, Trilogies. Some people love them, some people hate them. For those who love them, you probably got one in your mind that is undisputably the best, like the Lord of the Rings, or the original Star Wars trilogy. But what about this one, the Cornetto trilogy? Named after a popular ice cream to any Americans out there, and contains the following films: Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. Chances are some people didn't even know this was a trilogy, but believe me, it is. Even though they have different characters, they all fall under the same genre, have reoccurring actors in all of them, with Simon Pegg as the lead and Nick Frost as his sidekick. They're all directed by Edgar Wright. I could go on forever, baby. That impression was awful. Hope that explains the origin. So how is this the best? Well, let's not waste any more time and head into the first film to see if I can convince you, and myself, that they're a force to be reckoned with.
I'm taking a shortcut before.
Okay, first film. Gonna be interesting to talk about a film that I've never discussed before. Right, pretty sure this is the only film out of the Cornetto trilogy that I have mentioned on my channel, and in poor circumstances. But please, just take what I have to say into account. This was me 3 years ago, and my opinions certainly have changed since then. I would say that you should watch this video, but it is so bad that I'll spare you all that torture. So the real question is, what do I think of it right now? It's good, yes. From the beginning, it's clear that this trilogy and the comedic aspects it implements would not have worked without Wright's directorial style, as the introduction for Ed, Diane and David perfectly shows this. We believe at first that it's only Shaun and Liz having a conversation in the Winchester, but once each character is mentioned, they're brought into frame, therefore expanding our knowledge of the characters in the story in a very clever way. Speaking of the characters, I think they're all relatable in their own unique way. The only one I would really say is unlikable is David. But at the same time, every point he has in the film, like wanting to shoot Shaun's mum after she dies because he's afraid that she'll come back as a zombie, is a bit extreme, but you can kind of see his point. However, one character that I have very mixed feelings about, just like David, is Ed. On one hand, he's probably the funniest character, not just in the film, but throughout the entire trilogy, as he has so many one-liners that blend together with the brilliant writing, such as him subtly saying slurs while Shaun and Liz are talking, and him repeatedly saying sorry, only for him to say it again, and for us to realise he's apologising for a fart. Yes, it is a fart joke, but it's a lot more creative than just putting in a fart noise for comedic effects, which if we're being honest, those effects are as funny as two people jumping off a building.
You thinking what I'm thinking, partner? Aim for the bushes.
But on the other hand, throughout the film, he's constantly being told that he's been holding Shaun back for the majority of his life. But Shaun's mum slows the group down when she gets distracted by the zombie in the bathrobe, but I see no one blaming her. Yeah, Ed's whole character pretty much relies on him holding others back, but in some cases he's actually really helpful, like how he drives the group to where they need to go, and he's the only one who believes that the rifle can fire shots, which turns out to be correct. What does Shaun's mum do that's helpful? Exactly. I also love how this film isn't afraid to kill off any characters, which is a somewhat reoccurring theme in the trilogy. One film has many people die, another has no one die, and the other questions if people even die in the first place. Anytime someone dies, there's so much weight in the situation, as there is so much screen time in which we either see someone die before turning into a zombie, someone left behind in order for others to escape, or someone getting ripped apart like a Mortal Kombat finishing move. Wright's signature aspects are also great in this film, but I'm sure most people have mentioned them like 30,000 times already. But in case you don't know them, I'll quickly list them. A scene like this where Shaun flicks through the TV telling the audience that an apocalypse has broken out is key, because it shows that Wright is able to make a scene that, if shot normally, would seem generic.
Is prepared to comment. Religious groups are calling it Judgment Day. There's panic on the streets of London as an increasing number of reports of serious attacks on people who are literally being eaten alive.
But with a bit of editing trickery, makes this extremely memorable and satisfying for anyone watching this for the first time. Another one is repeating camera shots, like when Shaun goes to the shop signifying the blandness in his world, even after an apocalypse breaks out. And his final one is his attention to detail. Even though there's another film that I personally think has a lot more hidden stuff, this film should definitely not go overlooked. Like how in the first long take of him going to the shop, he gets a can of Coca-Cola, but in the second long take after he decides to change his life around, he switches to a Diet Coke. It's just little stuff like that that makes these films insanely rewatchable. The film also follows a concept of being realistic but unrealistic at the same time, which is also the case with Hot Fuzz and The World's End. They all take place in the real world, but have an unusual concept, and out of all three of the films, I think Shaun of the Dead definitely handles this the best. This is mainly because its aesthetic is dull and grey and boring. Heck, even the opening music fits with the aesthetic. But it fits so well with the world that Shaun lives in, never getting any brighter and never improving. In fact, since the apocalypse takes place across the span of a day, the aesthetic gets slowly darker and darker, representing the tone getting darker as the movie goes on. It may be a small detail, but it works so well for the final 30 minutes, which also has great uses of music, particularly Don't Stop Me Now by Queen. Apparently I complained about how overused this song was in movies, but from what I've researched, this was the first notable use of the song in movies. Along with the group whacking the pub owners on beyond beat to the song, me now can without a doubt give this song a pass.
I passed!
If there was one huge complaint though, it's that for me there's some serious pacing issues. For the majority of the film it flows really quickly, but with scenes such as the entirety of the movie before the apocalypse, minus the opening scene, and when the group is sneaking through back gardens, they feel a bit out of place tonally. Wait, is that Mr. Madden's? So yeah, my opinion has definitely changed on this movie since I first talked about it. And it's probably the most recognisable zombie movie out there, thanks to its unique style and blending of the horror and comedy genre. So for Shaun of the Dead, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. And for the ice cream I'd compare it to is, well, an actual Cornetto. Iconic, recognisable, loved among most people. But some parts of the ice cream are better than others, like the chocolatey part at the bottom. That part is seriously too nice for its own good. Wait, wasn't I supposed to be talking about films?
Yeah.
Oh, then what's the next one? Okay, this time I'm discussing a film that I've never talked about on my channel before, I think. But anyway, Hot Fuzz is simply brilliant. I'm certain that this long take of Officer Angel walking towards the desk is the only time where the movie lets you breathe. Because as soon as we are introduced to Sergeant Nicholas Angel, the UK's second best police officer behind PC Plum from Ballymorey, Wright's unique style once again takes us by storm, and frankly I think it does it the best. With Wright's signature quick cutting, used in scenes such as the When's Your Birthday scene, not only is it satisfying how quickly and fluently the scene is communicated to us, but it's also done in an absolutely hilarious way. This voice crack the third boy does when Nicholas asks when his birthday is,
Out!
is so simple and always gets a laugh out of me, and it doesn't even feel like the filmmakers are trying. But even when it does feel like it's trying, it still pays off wonderfully, like how Nicholas jumps over the fence like it's nothing, only for Danny to do this. It's this that makes this easily the best fence jump in the trilogy, because it takes time to build up the joke, and it's got by far the funniest payoff. Speaking of Danny and Nicholas, they're definitely my favourite duo in this trilogy by far. Sure, their relationship is getting to know each other with one of them despising the other at the start, but it really takes time for Nicholas to open up to Danny, and when he does, it feels very genuine, as up until that point, we haven't seen anyone able to do this, not even Nicholas's ex-girlfriend. Heck, even later in the film when he uses Danny as bait to escape the hooded figures, and Danny's father says he hasn't got the balls to kill Danny, Nicholas knows he's right, because he's built such a genuine bond with Danny. Like almost being killed by a sea mine, sharing corny one-liners under pressure, and Danny showing him the fake eye prank, which comes back to save Nicholas's life. Honestly, if that doesn't show the extent of their relationship in such a short time, then I don't know what does. But it's not just them that make the film. The amount of side characters that are in this film, and the fact that they are all memorable, is astounding to me. A huge factor can be contributed to the cast, as there are so many well-known faces that either have the role of a side character, are barely in the film, or have a very small cameo. For example, you have Timothy Dalton, Jim Broadbent, Olivia Colman, Bill Nighy, Mr. Madden, I mean Martin Freeman, David Bradley, Bill Bailey, Steve Coogan, and Peter Jackson and Kate Blanchett. Yeah, they're in this film, and the reason you didn't see them before was because the faces are completely covered. So don't worry, you're not blind, no Specsavers for you. And all these characters bring so much comedy in their interactions, with not just Nicholas, but each other. Like how Doris makes sexual comments and Bob simply replies with a funny word. That pretty much explains what Doris said for anyone who wasn't paying attention, or is too young to understand. And like Shaun of the Dead, the amount of little details in this film completely desecrates the amount Shaun of the Dead has. One of the best examples is the scene after Martin and Eva are murdered, and Skinner drives by to review the scene. And the song that's playing quietly in his car is Romeo and Juliet by Dire Straits, because Martin and Eve performed as Romeo and Juliet the night before. Simply genius. Even the second time this happens, there's a song which I haven't heard of before, but it's called Fire, and it plays after a rich guy's house went up in a fire, and I only caught onto this during my fourth viewing of the film, along with the misspellings on the newspapers, because Tim Messenger frequently misspelled words like bypass and angel, which foreshadows the reason he was murdered, and the result of all the murders that occur throughout the film come together for an epic shootout for the last 20 minutes. It is both intense and hilarious, which is an absolute miracle, as somehow no one is killed, and the amount of callbacks they have in this scene, and they work, such as the boys disregarding the sign that was established whenever Nicholas and Danny went to get a Cornetto, and the old woman shouting fascist, which was the word she got on the crossword when she first met Nicholas, whilst Nicholas replies with the word he got on the crossword, which was
Hag.
yeah, that. It just shows how well both a comedic and serious tone are balanced for such a long time. Another thing I love about this part of the film is the extra screen time Simon Skinner gets. Maybe because I recently watched The Living Daylights and Licence to Kill, and I was really gutted at the end of Licence to Kill, because Timothy Dalton certainly left a massive dent on the Bond franchise, and I just wasn't ready to let him go so quickly. So to see him shooting at a driving car whilst he's in a driving car, or in other words, to see him reenacting an average Tuesday in Birmingham really got my blood pumping. Like, come on, if Dalton having a fist fight with Peg and having a literal henchman isn't a homage to his time as Bond, then what is? So that's Hot Fuzz. It's without a doubt the best in the trilogy, and honestly one of my favourite comedies of all time. I don't really have much to say except it's pretty much flawless. Seriously, try and find anything wrong with this film, I dare you. So for Hot Fuzz I'd give it a solid 9 out of 10. And the ice cream I'd compare it to this time is a tub of Ben & Jerry's. You can use any flavour for this. On the surface it's basic, but once you have your first spoonful, you'll be hooked from the start, as every part of this delicious dessert is enjoyable. Now let's hope the next film is comparable to Ben & Jerry's. So the third and final film of the Cornetto trilogy is The World's End, and it's probably the least talked about out of the three. For good reason. That doesn't mean I think this is a bad film. There are definitely signs that Wright and Pegg definitely tried to make a film that was on par with the last two, like Wright's quick cutting with all the shots of beers being poured. Seeing techniques like this still being used after two films makes me so happy that they haven't missed a beat, especially when they still have comedic parts stuffed in there, such as the halting music when a glass of water is poured. It just always brings out a little giggle in me every time I watch this, but along with that, and the part where the group finishes each other's sentences after downing a pint, I can't quite remember any moments in the film where Wright's style stands out, except this scene of the group walking in precision. It's surprisingly well done. Also Mr. Madden's in the suit. But please, if I am forgetting something, please tell me in the comments. But if there is something, or someone, who isn't forgettable, it's Gary King. The energy that he brings to the beginning of this film is an absolute miracle, because as soon as we realise that something isn't right about Newton Haven, the energy of the film completely catches up with Gary's, unlike all his friends. I know they're meant to be grown up and all have lives far ahead of their school days, but that doesn't excuse them from being basic and boring. Heck, I couldn't even tell you their names, only the actors they play, and I sure as hell couldn't tell you the jobs they work. The only one I could give you information about is Gary, because we are given time to get used to him, and what he's been up to since the first pub crawl. And this doesn't just apply to Gary's friends, because I even forgot Pierce Brosnan was even in this, and I've seen this twice. You're telling me I'm in the middle of watching all his James Bond films, and I can't even remember that he's in this movie?
What?
The film's story is also not really that investing. The one thing that all the films have in the trilogy is a basic story, but with a twist that keeps you hooked. Very easy to explain, Shaun of the Dead has zombies, Hot Fuzz has the hooded cult, it's not that hard. But with this, it's aliens taking over the village where the group grew up, but it's just too far-fetched that I can't get invested too deeply in it. Yeah, the zombies and the shootout are extremely unlikely to happen, the chances are extremely low, but never zero. And if some of you say zombies aren't real, with the amount of time we spend on our phones every day, a zombie apocalypse is the most likely to happen. So, switch the bloody machine off! Sorry, I just missed Dalton. Since the concept is too far-fetched, I would have rather had the story do something more personally. Not just with the characters, but with the audience as well. And the unfortunate thing about this is that they almost do it, but then choose to disregard it. And I'm talking about when Sam and Gary are in the bathroom. No, not the first time. And Sam tells Gary to let go of the past. It's told in such a direct and intriguing way, with the lack of distractions and lack of background music, that it feels very out of place from a comedy. But don't get me wrong, I would much rather have this be a comedy film with one serious scene than a serious film with one comedic scene, because the fact that it's a comedy makes it more connected to its two predecessors. But even if it is a part of the trilogy, the moment they show a Cornetto rapper on screen feels completely forced, compared to the last two where they're either a funny visual gag or used to progress the story in a conventional way. Here, it just blows in the wind, and it's there. It's just not doing as much. Can I just play the clip again of the group walking in precision? There's just something so satisfying about that. If it sounds like I'm struggling to come up with points in this movie, it's because I am. And it's no wonder that this is probably the shortest review out of the three. even though it's the most recent one I've watched, because it's the last in a trilogy. I'd probably have to watch it like another 2 or 3 times to fully remember it, so I'll probably give it a 5 out of 10. Yeah, surprisingly I don't dislike this. And the ice cream I'd compare it to is a Fab. It's got an element at the start that I really like, and looks very satisfying. Maybe a bit more than the last 2 ice creams I've mentioned, but the other parts of the ice cream are either boring or not that interesting to keep biting into. I hope those ice cream parts won't be presumed as filler. So is this the best trilogy out there? Well, it could be. But I can't deny that it's definitely the most unique. Like, come on, 3 films that fall under the same genre and are named after a literal ice cream, but have 3 completely different stories to tell. And it all works. Even if I only rated The World's End a 5 out of 10, I can't deny that its concept, though far-fetched, did intrigue me like the other 2. And now that I've watched all 3 of them and talked about them in full length, I'm just gonna relax. I've earned this. Heck, I even got Cornettos written down on my shopping list. Hang on, who on earth put pickles there?